What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we have an absolutely huge Destiny 2 Shadowkeep and Season of the Undying update. So initially we get a look at a bunch of new exotics coming in Shadowkeep, as well as some new gear and armor, and new titles that we can expect to see. Some of that coming out of Pax, we'll talk about that in a moment, but Bungie talk about the September update, break down how the Battle Pass works and respond to some feedback about it, and then we get all new details about the season launch. New content going live on October 5th after the launch of Shadowkeep, and then we're going to talk story, rewards, Bungie clarify what's happening with the expected PvP reveal, and we've got a bunch of other things to talk about. So if you guys enjoyed the video, a rating really helps me out. But now let's get into it. First up, let's take a look at a bunch of new stuff coming out of Pax. Plastered all over Reddit today are screens of new gear, titles. They're actually pictures that folks have taken at the Pax event. I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be happening, but I will link all of those Reddit threads down below, and of course credit to the original posters, but initially, we do get 3 new titles here. So we have Undying, and this is to complete all of the triumphs for Season of Undying, of course, and there are 14 of those. There's the Seal Harbinger, and that's the Shadowkeep seal itself, and then even one for Garden of Salvation called Enlightened, and that does have 16 requirements there. So 3 new titles, of course, one of them is going to be attached to the season, so you'll need to own the season for that. Harbinger is attached to Shadowkeep, so you'll need Shadowkeep for that one, and presumably you'll need Shadowkeep for the Enlightened title as well. But here, we start to get a look a little bit closer at some of the exotics. So the new Void rocket launcher that we've spotted is actually called Deathbringer, and we can see it comes with the bonus Dark Deliverance. Fires remotely detonated projectiles that drop void orbs on enemies, and you hold the trigger to fire and then release to detonate. So yes, it is pretty much a Nova Bomb launcher, and that's what we could see in the trailer. It also comes with a perk called Dark Descent, but we don't know what that one does. Then there is Divinity, and this is the Vex-themed trace rifle that we've seen quite a bit. Sustained damage with this weapon envelops the target in a field that weakens and disrupts them. So it sort of creates this crit spot on enemies. And then the new machine gun comes with a perk called Pyrotoxin Rounds, which fires high-powered explosive ammunition. In the builder packs, this one doesn't actually have a name yet. We can see it also comes with high cal and rangefinder there. And then we can see here that folks have also snapped pictures of collections. Maybe we could be looking at raid gear. Certainly new activity rewards for Shadowkeep specifically, and we can tell that from the icon. And this is a new Vex helmet being worn by the Titan. So there we go, a better look at some of the gear in Shadowkeep. Let us know your thoughts about it down below. Next up though, just this week Bungie announced a Battle Pass style system for Destiny 2, and if you missed that, I'll link the video about it down below. But the developers jump in to confirm a couple of things about it. So Deej said, in addition to what you can earn by playing activities in the game, every season of Destiny 2, Year 3, will have 2 tracks for rewards as you rank up. The upper track is free to all players, and the lower track is for players who opt in on the Season Pass. So that kind of explains the free and premium tracks that Luke Smith spoke about. The top row of items can be earned simply by playing Destiny 2, whether you own any of the expansions, whether you own that particular season. And then the bottom row are items that can be earned by players who own that seasonal content. So you don't have to buy the season and then buy the Battle Pass. This is actually a new intrinsic part of the season itself and some of the rewards for it. And once again, any of these items can be purchased a la carte. So at least that clarifies how it works. But yes, certain non-expansion rewards, so seasonal drops, will be present. And that does include exotics, weapons, armor pieces, and other material bundles. So there has been a mixed response from players. For me personally, I just hope that this doesn't take the personality or the stories away from actually receiving epic loot in Destiny. Ariana's exotic hand cannon, for example, sounds really awesome, and that is something that we'll be able to use via these seasonal tracks, but personally I'd much rather earn it in the world, or should I say from a place or an enemy in the world by doing a cool thing. That's just my concern, but everyone's different, and the system is designed for that, so be sure to share your thoughts with us below. Now though, we've got a bunch of new Shadowkeep interviews, and these come from MyMMO and EveryEye.it, so I'll link them down below. So they ask the question, will Season of the Undying officially start with the new raid? And what can we expect in terms of new content? And Wendy Wade from Bungie said, formally, the Season of Undying will begin on October 1st, so all of the PvP content, for example, will be available immediately. But PvE content, on the other hand, will start a few days later, on October 5th, when the Garden of Salvation raid will become available to players. In practice, the return of Guardians in the Black Garden will trigger a reaction of the Vex who will respond to what they consider a hostile invasion pouring en masse onto the moon. At this point, we will trigger a cycle of activities that we could assimilate to what we've seen in the Dreaming City after the first completion of the Last Wish raid, and they go on to say that there will be, as in all seasons, completely new content, so this is going to be a slightly different launch experience for D2. The season of Undying does officially begin on October 1st, but as we speculated a couple of days back, Garden of Salvation is going to be the tipping point for the arrival of secret seasonal content. So when players invade the Black Garden, the Vex will retaliate by pouring onto the lunar surface. Not only this, but once the raid has been accessed or completed, completely new content will go live in the game. As Wendy from Bungie stated, the PvE content goes live after this act in the story, and with a new PvE activity called Vex Offensive listed for Season 8 specifically, I'd say even if you aren't raiding, definitely mark your calendar for October 5th, as it looks like the new activity content will land into the game then. And yes, all players will have access to the Vex Offensive, which is a new match-made activity in the Black Garden. But of course, the delivery of content will even include things like the artifact, so Ben Womack said that each season will have its own artifact, which the player will unlock at some point in the storyline. More on the subject of the artifact though, Ben Womack does say that by investing a certain number of levels in the artifact, you'll be able to unlock rare mods and have high power drops, so Ben is essentially confirming that the level we upgrade the artifact to, and those are the same levels that actually grant artifact power, they'll be organised in different unlock thresholds for some of the unique perks, so it looks kind of like a prestige system. You know, maybe level 1 requires 20,000 XP, but then each level needs progressively more. But let's get back to some story details for Shadowkeep. Considering we're looking at both the Vex and what's going on the moon, I say, if we understand this correctly, then the Guardians will live 2 parallel stories, one dedicated to Eris and the Hive, but the other focused on the Vex. So how long will the main Shadowkeep storyline be? And Wendy says there will be 2 storylines, although they'll obviously end up intertwining, and somehow both of them will also affect the general story of the World of Destiny. But as for the amount of content, you won't have to expect a long, elaborate main quest like Forsaken. Even in terms of story, it's going to be pretty similar to what we saw in Rise of Iron. So I really like the idea of these converging storylines, but in terms of substance, Bungie are also saying that we should expect a Rise of Iron level campaign going in. Rise of Iron had, I believe, 6 or 7 main missions or quest steps to get through the campaign, and I guess we should expect a similar experience. I'm not sure whether Nightmare Hunts form part of that campaign itself, but I would guess they are mostly endgame and probably kind of replayable missions. Further on the subject of story though, they say Eris Morn and Cayde 6 had a special relationship. Will Eris react to the death of Cayde? And they do say that Eris is very much focused on what's happening on the moon. On the subject of potential returning characters though, the devs say that primarily this will be focused in the enemies of Shadowkeep, and specifically the Nightmares, of course, Crota, Skolas, Omnigul. We've seen quite a few of them already. Here though, they ask, will the story of Uldren Sov be picked up or continued in Shadowkeep? And they do refer to the Uldren cutscene from post-Forsaken, but say it looks like we'll have to wait a little longer. Bungie said, Uldren's story is not the focus of Shadowkeep. At some point, this story will certainly be picked up again, but not now. So once again, Uldren is not going to be the focus in Shadowkeep, but the devs did actually confirm that Uldren's story will absolutely continue in the future. I mean, we kind of guessed that anyway, but confirmation is nice, and we can expect to learn about that sometime soon. Now here there's a pretty interesting question about mods, and they ask how many brand new, unpublished mods will we find in Shadowkeep? And Wendy says there will be more than you'd expect. The mods related to the finisher move are just one example, but consider that as soon as you find the first Armor 2.0 piece, and that includes things like the Solstice sets that you may have access to, you will receive a packet with more than a dozen mods never seen before. And with these we can start experimenting straight away, so that's some really good news. The first 2.0 armor drop that we receive is essentially going to come with a new mod starter pack, if you like. They say with more than a dozen, so 12 or so brand new, never before seen mods. And remember, once we have these, they can be slotted into any armor we pick up. On top of this, these mods are separate from the other new kind of endgame mods that we'll earn via the artifact, we'll find in the new DLC and seasonal activities as well as the raid. So we're going to get a fairly plentiful bounty of new perks right from the season launch, all the way up into the endiest of endgame. Sounds good to me. But they try and pull a couple of new details here, and they say will dealer inventories finally be updated with Shadowkeep? Of course they're talking about vendors in the game. And Bungie say the inventory of the planetary dealers receives an update with the release of Shadowkeep. The weapons will probably not change, but the armor available there will be updated to 2.0 versions. There'll also be new weapons from Eris on the moon, and of course we can expect other features like new bounties, so a possible update to some planetary vendors, primarily in that their armor drops will be 2.0 now. And here there's a pretty interesting question about the kind of philosophy with weapons in the game. So that's a bunch of Shadowkeep stuff right there. Next though, I wanted to talk about some PvP stuff, and of course there's been a lot of conversation about PvP reveals that are coming up for Shadowkeep. On the list of things that Bungie wanted to talk about before the end of August, they did put PvP reveal, as well as the Crucible stuff they're showing at PAX. And then Luke Smith also discussed some PvP stuff in Director's Cut, but because of that listing for a PvP reveal, a lot of people are now wondering where it is. Now DMG said, when's the PvP reveal, as promised in a previous twab? And he said that we covered a lot of Crucible changes in the Director's Cut. There are a few execs that we'll be sharing with you closer to launch, things like which maps are going on hiatus, additional glory changes, etc., but that is not happening this week. 3v3 elimination will be available via Crucible Labs when Shadowkeep launches, and we'll have more details on the variations of game mode rules that we'll be testing out in labs in September. So initially, it doesn't look like we're getting another content reveal for PvP as far as we can tell. Luke Smith did speak about a lot of really good stuff: playlist changes, map changes, reprising modes from D1, reworking glory in the game, matchmaking, having solo playlists, and these are all really awesome needed changes for Crucible. But I think because these follow the lines of kind of quality of life, albeit a hell of a lot of quality of life changes, I think players, when you talk about a reveal, definitely potentially expect something more substantial. One of the reasons may be that in that list of upcoming reveals, PvP was listed separately to the Director's Cut. So of course you've got Luke Smith's update there, but you've also got the PvP reveal listed, and so I can see why that may have been a little bit misleading, and I'm sure that was completely unintentional on Bungie's part, by the way. Also, Luke Smith wrote 9 in italics when talking about the Trials hiatus, so he was kind of suggesting that the 9 mode isn't necessarily a focus, but another mode of Trials maybe, and alongside that tease he did say that if elimination performs well, then they would look to find it a warmer home. And this certainly sounds like a tease to Mercury, or the Trials in general, so I think it makes a little bit more sense now. As Bungie initially kind of suggested, they are doing the quality of life stuff, and testing to see whether players would engage in modes like elimination again via Crucible Labs, and then down the road, if that is working out, Bungie could well bring back Trials of Osiris. So that's kind of what I'm getting from it, and I think it's an okay plan, but I do understand how expectation has kind of been built, especially for core PvP fans. It's been a while since we had major content, and hopefully Bungie will see fit to bring this kind of PvP event back. So let us know what you think about it, but bear in mind, the glory and ranking reworks with the playlist changes and sandbox improvements, and new rewards to chase, is certainly going to feel like a much bigger PvP refresh than what we've had since Forsaken. So just kind of a quick update on what's going on with that. And of course at PAX, Bungie are letting folks jump in, try elimination out on reprise maps like Widow's Court. Next week, we get hotfix 2.5.2.2, and this is when the community event is going to go live, as well as changes for the Wendigo and Mountain Top quest, loot buffs and a bunch of other stuff, but DMG clarified what the changes to some of those quests are going to be. So for the Wendigo GL3, grenade launcher kills are worth 100% more for each objective on the quest after the update. On top of this, the death penalty no longer exists for the final objective. Grenade launcher multi-kills will grant 50% more progress, and completing playlist strikes grants a significant amount of progress towards the final objective. Then for Mountaintop, the required number of multi-kills has been reduced from 200 to 75, the number of medals reduced from 100 to 25, and then points earned in competitive has been further increased relative to other PvP modes, roughly ×1 for quick play, ×2 for Iron Banner, and 3 for comp. And so definitely fairly significant changes to some of the steps there, and it will make acquiring either of those weapons quite a bit easier, so let us know your thoughts about it. But now, let's get back to some of those interview segments. Here they give some really interesting details about New Light, and of course initially they break down that this is the free-to-play section of the game. Anyone who plays New Light is going to play the Awakening mission from the Cosmodrome, and then they'll be sent to the tower to visit various NPCs, and Bungie have crafted kind of quests and missions that send players into various activities. Of course this is for new players, but there'll be sort of an introduction into Crucible strikes, kind of similar to what we saw in the original campaign, I'm sure. But here's some really interesting stuff about Bungie's kind of strategy. So Forsaken missions and strikes will actually be accessible or visible on playlists, but if players don't own Forsaken, then they won't be able to select them freely and actually jump in and play them. With exotics, it's going to work in very much the same way. So they've said that you could drop exotics from a particular expansion as a New Light player, so you may actually get a Shadowkeep exotic, but you won't be able to equip it on your character unless you own that piece of content. So that's really interesting in itself, and of course with cross-save, if you earn a weapon on a platform where you own that content drop, you can then use that weapon on any platform. But as a pure New Light player, it would be possible to randomly receive, One-Eyed Mask, for example. But from what they're saying, it would basically be grayed out on your character until you buy Forsaken. Talk about teasing. On top of this though, In New Light, it will be possible to play the first mission of the Shadowkeep campaign, and you'll get access to the destination. So there will be kind of a taster section of Shadowkeep available to new players, but any New Light player can reach the new level cap, and that's going to be 960. So just a few interesting confirmations. Of course, if you are going to be playing New Light, then it's pretty useful information, but I think for the rest of us it's interesting as well, right? Bungie are going to let players earn items that they don't necessarily own. And that's actually a potentially fantastic selling strategy, right? Because I've just got this dope exotic, but I can't use it until I pick up the DLC. Not really a complaint from me though, considering how much free content will be in New Light. I think it's going to be a pretty fantastic free-to-play game. And of course, if Bungie can keep making new fantastic content for everyone, as more people come on board and start investing into stuff, then on the whole that is going to be a really healthy thing for Destiny 2. For today though guys, I would love to hear your thoughts about any of the stuff we've spoken about in the video. Really looking forward to that kind of seasonal content drop. If you're planning on jumping into the raid and then you want to get into the seasonal content as well, then October 5th is going to be very busy. But I'm sure for all of us, as of October 1st, there's going to be plenty of stuff to do if you're picking up Shadowkeep. So, as always, give us your thoughts down below. If you've enjoyed the video though, a rating really helps me out. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe to see everything related to Destiny 2 right here. Otherwise though, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.